Whoops, I'm talking to myself. Hey, Zach, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Okay, great. So I can be heard?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can be heard.
Guys, everybody who is on, thanks for being here. So we have a great subject and a great lineup today. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. First, I'll just say that we are, this is an event series that Made Talks wanted to be doing in person, and we had planned to. Obviously, present circumstances make that impossible. So we're excited to be kicking it off digitally and remotely for now. And of course, I want to mention, so Made Talks is this platform for this event and for others. It's a series meant to bring marketing, creative, PR, and data communities together to discuss emerging trends and how we can all make better decisions. So I don't know if Annie or somebody wants to throw the link into the chat so that you guys can have it to see the other great talks that are happening on this channel. So I'll let these guys just do a quick bio for themselves. You can see here on the screen too, and then we'll talk about the subject. Laura, do you want to kick it off?
Hey everyone, I'm Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash and the host of the Reset podcast. Super excited to have a great conversation with you all about the changing face of events and where marketing is going now.
Tara?
So I'm Tara Pritchett. I lead marketing for Accenture in the Metro DC area. A really fun role because get to have my hand in everything from our creative to our events and sponsorships and social media. So a little bit of everything, and really excited to talk about this topic because I think it's more important now than ever before.
Great, Mr. Yellis.
Hey everyone, Nathaniel Yellis. I'm a consultant at HubSpot, the sales, marketing, and service software company. I work with marketers to help them use technology to make their message better. But it's fun to be with you today to talk about the messages themselves. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
All right, awesome. So the subject here came out of this line from Seth Godin, who most of you will know, I'm sure, thought leader and a marketer and a kind of guru in this space. He says, how many people would reach out and wonder or complain if you didn't send out that next email blast? And it's a good question because for most brands, the answer is nobody. Nobody would complain. Nobody would reach out and say, where's my email this week? They'd probably just be grateful that their inbox was a little less cluttered. So what we kind of want to explore is what is the reason for this phenomenon? Why are most things that brands say lacking some critical form of substance? So I think that I want to give each of these guys a chance to get some initial thoughts. But as we go through this, if you who have joined us are either, if you're in marketing or content or creativity spaces at all, please feel free to interject, type a question, or raise your hand. We want this to be as interactive a conversation as possible. So with that, Yellis, can I start with you? Do you have any thoughts on our theme?
Yeah, so the number one thing that comes to my mind is marketers tend to be speaking on behalf of brand instead of themselves. And so good communication starting with knowing yourself and knowing something that only you can say. And it's sometimes tough to shift into that mindset when saying something on behalf of a brand. So when we're talking on behalf of a brand, I feel like the blocker is we end up saying something that we think sounds good instead of something that's authentically something only our brand or ourselves can say. And thus, the kinds of things we say, the kinds of emails that marketers sometimes send on behalf of the brand sort of revert to a mean. And it's almost like any company or any company in a given marketer's sector could have said the same thing, sent the same email, given the same message. And to me, that's what contributes to the noise.
Because we got a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to just say, I think that's such a good point. And I think knowing yourself and being true to you is important. And as well, it's important to know who the customer is. Like, I really feel like that is number one, know your customer. It sounds very basic, But I think a lot of times we get caught up in biases that we may have or anecdotal information, and we think we know the customer, but we may not really truly know them. And making sure that you know what they want and how you can provide value to them as a company, that's also very important in that equation.
Right. Absolutely. And so, and what it's, when you guys said that, I think everybody has examples right away in their head. They know the emails they're going to get on a Friday from the same brand and why, they're going to kind of beat a drum that they've heard before and say something that the people sending it know is irrelevant. And it's a strange phenomenon because as people, we're not chronically boring. We're interesting and we have things to say and we want to talk about new ideas. But when we get into a corporate mode or a branding environment, we tend to start saying things that are trivial, that everyone will definitely agree with, that are easier to get across. And so if anybody, by the way, anybody listening has an example of this that they think is relevant, please share it. If anybody has a theory on why we tend to fall into this trap, please share that too, because I think that would be great fodder for discussion. So I think
people get I think folks forget that, that everyone's still human, and at the end of the day, you've got to bring the humanity back to the brand. I think we've all been getting those now more than ever. We're all in this together emails, and we're just like, could you not? There's a global pandemic. And instead, it's like, how do you infuse humanity, authenticity, inclusivity, and respect back to your customers right now? Because it's not so much, I want you to buy this car, but it is, here's what we as a brand are standing for in this very unique moment. And the brands that are savvy enough and are aware enough and have people who are actually paying attention to the world around them right now are going to be the ones we want to hear from versus just the noise of those emails that go direct into our spam.
Right. And so what does that look like in your industry right now, Laura? Because I know, right, you're in the events business and obviously that's taken a hit, but mainly what you're doing is trying to connect with people and trying to say something that will resonate, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, for the events business, one, obviously a big chunk of that is created away in about 48 hours because you could no longer be in person with someone. And the best clients have been the ones who've been like, okay, let's pivot to virtual if it makes sense. Because if what we're trying to do can't be translated into a virtual experience, we'd rather not shoehorn it into one, but we move it over to 2021 when we know it will be safe to have people converge. And think about what other values could we bring right now? Could we provide smaller, more intimate conversations over a technology platform to help guide and inform, but also, what are we doing out in the community? How are we sort of repivoting our resources to donate to World Central Kitchen? How are we activating, those tents we were going to use to help for testing centers? Again, the brands who are aware and acknowledge this moment and then utilize their powers for good are going to be the ones who win.
That's great.
And even scrambling. So I think, on the events side of things too, I felt like, the first week of the pandemic, I got a million emails about, we're all in this together, brands I haven't shopped with in like 10 years. But then we also got a lot of, events, and everybody I could have spent my whole day going to different events, 1 hour events, 3 hour events, a whole day full of events. But I think knowing, when to pivot to like next year, but then also knowing when to hold off and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to let some other folks try this out, especially if it's new and you haven't done it before. Let them work out some of the kinks, expose yourself to some of those types of things and learn from them, and then go forward. Being a fast follower is not a bad thing. So, learning from what you're seeing and then using that information to push forward and have something even better.
So have you implemented that with Accenture, do you feel?
Yeah, actually, funny enough, so we had a lot of events, and just like Laura was saying, they all went away in a matter of 2 days. But we decided to stand up some of our own virtual events around topics that were really strategically important. And we got together this, we call it Tiger Team or Scrum team of folks, none of who really, we had events people on, we had folks from marketing, we had folks who developed content, folks from sales, and it was a group that had never worked together before. And so I got to tell you, I was a little like, how is this going to happen? Because the other thing was, we needed to get out there quickly. And so it's a new group. None of us have done virtual events before, but it all goes back to having a really great team and people who are just like, okay, I'm all in. I haven't done it before, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to figure it out. And so, in a matter of 3 weeks from the date we got to meet each other to an actual event, we had one really very successful event, and now we have a series of events happening throughout the next month or so.
And how do you make sure that you're guaranteeing a certain amount of substance in them? Because like you said, it's this rush to be this kind of center of authority right now and have all these events. And how do you kind of oversee that process and make sure that it's not going to become the fodder for an event like this?
Well, I think it's important to always keep in mind what your goals are, and then constantly going back and saying, because it's very easy to get off course, and especially when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, you can be going in different directions. But I think you always have to bring it back to say, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? And are we on track to do that? And sometimes, you might not be on the right track, and then you have to reel it back. But, focusing on the content and the value, thinking about like, what is the putting ourselves in the shoes of our clients and saying, what are they dealing with right now and how can we help them? And then putting together content that actually answers that question.
I think that value for the attendee or the recipient or the viewer is like a really crucial weighing mechanism. Because whether it's an event or a digital event or hitting send on an email or putting a video up on the company YouTube channel, for the marketer who's super busy, and like we all know, there's 57 things to do and there's time to do about 7 of them well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that work can become an end in itself. Like jam the video out, hit send on the email, have the event. We have like the Zoom webinar is up. Okay, now we're done. If like the things become an end in themselves, then we totally lose sight of the value for the recipient or the viewer or the attendee. And unless that's the guiding star, like a lot of stuff's going to become a lot of noise really quickly. So I love that you said value for the recipient. Like the marketers that keep that in mind are the ones who are not adding to the noise.
And how do you, so you're in a big company, so you have only so much control over that, right? How do you handle that?
Well, I have to admit to having not forwarded some of the emails that my company sent to some of my customers.
You're admitting this? You can say that? All right.
Well, I feel like if I had a nickel for every time I read unprecedented times, I would have a really big stack of nickels. Yes, the times are unprecedented, but honestly, like so I advise marketers, like sometimes I just have to call them on the carpet and say like, this is a nice landing page, but what's the point? Your
Right.
email looks really good, but what's in it for the recipient? Why should I open this? Why should I fill out your form? And I try to do it in a nice and humorous way, but sometimes marketers need to be challenged on that because we made the email really pretty, but it's not a hill of beans in someone's inbox, right? And we have to hold ourselves up to that standard because it's pretty easy to hit send in software, right?
So, and Laura, I feel like, you could comment on this too. Is there, because Yellis is right, and we talk about value add all the time and other terms that get thrown around, actionable insight and community building and fostering. We're really good at naming the right things to do. Like we're geniuses at that. Everybody's 100% of the time can be, throw out a term and was like, yes, let's do that. That sounds great. But how do you take it from that theory to something where the clients can see, a change?
Well, we have to stop being copywriters and actually be project managers and actually, think about what actually is happening and how do we effectively build campaigns and programs that actually will get the recipient to, one, find a value, as everyone else has been saying, along the way. Like if you don't, if you can do 1,000,001 Zoom webinars, but if they're just doing that because you're just trying to pump out more sales, the first ones will be great, but by the third one, people will be hip to the game and not want to come back. So you've got to think about, just like we would do any marketing campaign, define the strategy first, figure out what you're trying to say, figure out an authentic way to say, because we also can understand this a lot better than most now because we're all home. So we're seeing this all the time. So, before where we may have had like 2 seconds to look at it, I can actually look at your email now. And if I'm like, what are you doing? I'm going to be quicker to unsubscribe than I would have been, 3 months ago, because I was like, oh, I'll just pass on that email from whatever company. Now I'm like, this is what brand X is saying. This is how they've been like, bye-bye. And then the relationship is gone. So remembering that strategy yields real campaigns, and then tracking those results and following through on those results and testing along the way, that's how I think brands can actually be much more successful at this very unique time, obviously.
Tara, Yellis was willing to criticize his own company. Will we get anything similar?
This isn't being recorded, is it?
Anything similar on Accenture during this?
These are tough times. Zach. I don't know if I want to do that. No, I mean, no company is perfect. And I will say, we're definitely learning. Like I said, our team hadn't done virtual events before, but, we are fortunate that we have a lot of people who are very okay, I'm going to just do my best and try to make it a success. And we had a lot of learnings from the beginning. And all we can do with that is try to, learn from that. And then the next one will be better. I think the really great thing that's come out of, the only maybe good thing that's come out of this pandemic is that, the human part that Laura was talking about, I think it's so important. And I'm so grateful that this has come, full circle, because I think that we have an opportunity now. People don't expect everything to be perfect. They get it. We're all doing the best we can. So I think we have a unique opportunity as marketers right now to try different things. Not everything has to be something that, you spent 6 months perfecting and, crossing every T and dotting every I. That's been challenging for me because I like to have all my T's crossed and I's dotted, but I think it's kind of loosened us up a little bit. And so that we feel a little more comfortable coming out and saying, hey, it's not maybe perfect, but you're going to get what you need to get out of it. And, the next one will be even more polished.
Okay, so no dirt on Accenture there.
Not yet.
Any guests, if you want to be as honest as Nathaniel and spill the beans on your own companies, what they're doing wrong, please comment. I know who some of you work for. You should all definitely be commenting.
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
Question here. So earlier we were talking about, right, being the canned messages and moving on to authentic message, right? And how do you make sure that you don't cross the line and be too authentic, right? What kind of guardrails or bullet points or check marks you should go through to kind of define it, right? My essential in simplistic terms is like, where do you draw the line?
Good question, and I feel like all of you guys will have great answers to this. But I feel like that's as soon as this conversation starts to go in this direction, that's the first thing, is the safety impulse kicks in, right? And we say, wait a minute, can I get in trouble? Can I offend somebody? Can I go too far? Can I alienate a potential customer? So how do you guys deal with that voice, and which side do you err on?
Well, I thought Nathaniel had a really good point at the beginning when he talked about knowing your brand. And it has to be not only knowing your brand like high level, you have to think through, what does your brand mean and what's the persona of the brand in different circumstances so that you're ready for that.
Yeah, you have to define it overtly. That's a great point, Tara, because if you don't have a definition of voice and tone and like stuff that we're willing to tackle as a brand, the standard really easily becomes never offend anyone ever. And if you want to add to the noise, have that standard, because you'll say, just like your brand will say nothing if that's your standard, like never, ever. Will you say anything interesting if that's the standard? So having some clear definition, and then I honestly think like knowing the third rail stuff that you're willing to touch. Like, are we a brand that curses? Okay, let's own that and actually be that. Like T-Mobile had a weird interaction where the CEO was cursing all over the stage and then apologized, but then came back out and said, yeah, we're in, this is what we are. Like, maybe don't go like double back, but if like, do the thing that you actually can do and like clearly create your sandbox, you know?
Great.
Well, it's not even about, going too far. It's about who are you? Like, I use my favorite recent example of this is the Steakums brand. So I hope you guys see this on Twitter, but Steakum, which we all used to eat when we were in like junior high school, has the most thoughtful yet culturally aware and like brass tacks, this is what's actually happening. Twitter stream has been going on for months. And when COVID first broke out, they were talking about logically, here's why you should be actually wearing a mask. Here's why you should be socially distancing. And really speaking to it in a way that you're like, wait, Steakums is actually being more clear-eyed than a lot of newscasters that we're reading. But when you went back and looked at what the brand was doing, they'd been doing that for quite a while. It didn't just come out of the blue. And that's why people embraced it, because once you may have just seen it now, because again, we're all home. And so we have more time to be on our phones and go through our Twitter streams. But this authenticity for Steakums was what talking in like plain language, common sense, and speaking truth to power. So it's been fascinating to see how they've grown and how there's been a little bit of backlash, and they're like, nope, this is who we are, this is what we're gonna say. And so when you think about it from a brand perspective, who you are, you already know what your guardrails are. Like, no one has to define that for you. If you don't curse, you don't curse. If you do curse, then you're gonna curse. But if you're gonna define who that is, say who that is, and honor who that is.
That's great. Good question in the chat from Mary. So many commercials, emails today look the same. Stay home, stay safe, stay connected. How do companies stand out as we shift to phase 1 and people begin to leave home? So I think this is good. I'm sure, Tara, you've been in meetings where you've had this conversation.
Yeah, and I think staying true to who you are, and getting beyond, we have to always think about the context, right? So the situation that we're in, that's key. But, being true to that brand and what you're trying, what you can provide, what value you can provide, I think that still needs to stay a number one. I think you do have to be, especially now, because it's a little bit wild, wild west right now. And so you do have to have the right guardrails in place. But I think, staying true to your brand and staying true to the value and how you can help your customers, I think that will be the center point, regardless of what phase we're in.
And what do you guys think? Do you use your experience, do you draw from your experience as consumers in your work? When you're online, do you keep track of what works on you, what annoys you, what actually moves the needle?
I definitely do. I think we're so lucky as marketers in that we're really immersed in our craft every day. So we have tons of examples, and I think it's important to learn from them, but also to ask yourself, like, one, understand that you're not necessarily the target market. And then two, understand why it makes you feel a certain way. So like if I get an email and it's like a frustrating email, I try to think through like, okay, so what is it exactly about this email that's making me annoyed? Why do I want to hit unsubscribe? And then taking that and, keeping it in the back of my mind. But it is important to like leave your biases aside as you're working on your own brand.
Great.
I'm looking at Mary's comment in the chat, and just the like stay home, stay safe, stay connected quotes are jumping out at me, because it seems like the major utilities, like there's a Verizon commercial, there's a P&G commercial that come to mind, and I think they literally say those words. And it's like the brands that got fastest on television after the pandemic quarantine hit in are now like they're telling people to stay home when like governors of states and the Center for Disease Control says, hey, it's fine to go outside, just wear a mask. So but to me, it almost feels like Mary's question is a little bit like should brands like jump into what's almost becoming a sort of red state, blue state culture war thing? where there are some places where it's okay to leave home. There are some places where it's probably not. There are some people who are making mask wearing like a political statement. And so it feels to me like there's both the like, there's the how do we evolve our messages as the culture changed, but there's also like a culture war sort of impact to some of that pandemic related stuff. And I'm saying that that just came to my mind. I'm curious, like Laura, Tara, how do you react to that? Like when something your brand is talking about almost feels like it's a like an op-ed page, like food fight between, you know, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Like what, how do you
When
stay
you
away? Do you go into it?
You know, when all of a sudden you're being made to take a side, you didn't even realize that there was a fight, and now whatever you say is loaded, even though you didn't mean for it to be loaded.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about your risk tolerance for a brand,
Right.
and how much you're willing to, like, you know, roll that dice. You know, if the words "stay home" have become polarized, there's not a whole lot you can do because you're in the middle of a pandemic. So, you know, I think it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you've got to stand for something, you stand for nothing. And like, if you're quoted Norvin and you've made $1 gazillion on toilet paper because people have been staying home, it would be really weird for you, but now go outside. But more importantly, it's a, you know, if all your messaging really evokes about, it goes to the heart of what you're really standing for, and it's not you're just jumping in because you think you have to, but like that's who you've always been. Like, you know, I'll relate that statement, like that's who they've been. You know, it's weird, like every car company is like, stay home, stay safe, but please buy a car. It's like that, you're missing that, right? So, you know, you have to figure out, one, what your risk tolerance really is if this becomes a thing, and two, provided that you're okay with that, do you want to lean in more towards that, or do you just want to like ride the tide? And you know, as things move faster than ever now, it's an ongoing discussion that there isn't one answer that's today on May 28th that will be the same answer you'll have on June 28th, just because things are moving so quickly.
Yep.
I have a question, Zach.
Yes, please.
Especially to Tara, she just mentioned about these emails getting frustrating. Sometimes you see an email and it's just frustrating, but you need to understand that you may not be the target audience for that. I recently got an email wishing me happy Eid. Eid is a Muslim festival, and they tried to do a play of word, and they did happy co-Eid. So I wanted to understand, where is the line between using this as an opportunity and being insensitive?
I think that line's crossed. I feel like there's something very wrong about that.
Everyone's shaking their heads right now.
Yeah, the words, but it forced me to open the email. Like, was it just what that the brand wanted? They just wanted me to open it and see what it is.
But what value is that? And in my personal opinion, I don't feel like that's very valuable, because now you've seen that, you maybe didn't feel good about it. Now you've shared it on a webinar. And so we're all like, now I want to know which brand that was that did that. You know, even just opening the emails. And I think a lot of brands do that. They want the shock factor, but at the end of the day, is that going to help your brand? Is that going to help drive sales? You know, usually not. People usually don't say like, oh, that was so crazy and nuts, I think I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna use their services. It's just.
Well, it drives up the open rate. So, I mean, it brings up a deeper question, which is how incentivized are we to look at short-term metrics as results that what we're doing is working? You know, if that probably did have a high open rate if they were willing to put something provocative in the subject line, but it really,
yeah, because back of my head, it was an agency just trying to show it to the client that we had a good open rate. So, yeah.
Ooh.
right.
Well, music to my ears about numbers, Zach, and data, but that's not the way you get that, number one. And I don't know, did you end up keeping that? You don't have to tell us the brand, but, you know, did it really do the opposite? So obviously we talk about data on these webinars a lot, and I'm the boring numbers person, but I mean, ultimately it's why we're doing these things. We're measuring, we're using that information. That's not enough, right? Who cares that you've had the reaction? If you got a negative reaction, it actually is, it's not thought through. I think it's what Laura was talking about at the beginning. Like, do you have a strategy, or is it just like hit send and let's see what happens?
And
I
maybe
immediately
the goal was to get a high open rate. If that was the goal and that was, the strategy they set forth, then okay, then they achieved that. But I hope they are looking at, the sell through and, how many, I don't know what the brand is, so I don't know what they're selling, but, you have to look at it holistically. It can't just be based on one metric.
So this brings up, I think, a good point. So what do you guys think about, in some ways, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, and certainly in the next 5 to 10 years, our jobs as strategists and marketers are easier because there are more ways than ever to get in front of your ideal audience. We know, you can micro target on several channels and you can find out exactly where they are, but getting their attention is harder than ever because there's more noise. So it's this weird kind of paradox. How do you guys handle that in your own roles? And you brought it up, and I was just about to, what is the role of data in that? I mean, how did data and creativity have to mix together to make these efforts successful? Sorry, let's start with Nathaniel.
How do we look at data to make things successful? Convoluted question, man.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I always push my marketers to focus on a KPI that actually matters to the business. Think of that as the top of the pyramid. Perhaps with a direct email program, it's sales, if they're, say, a e-com company. Perhaps with a direct email program, it's books of demos or booking a conversation with the sales team if they're a more indirect or a direct sales like B2B company. In that case, we would put at the top of our pyramid dollars or demos, and then open rate, click rate, opt-out rate, bounce rate. Those are all contributing metrics to the actual purpose for the business. And spoiler alert, if you're ever a HubSpot customer and I'm your consultant, I'll push you to actually move the things around on your dashboard to show that so that we can put data in its proper context. Right? I don't care if the open rate was really high because we were offensive. No one booked a demo out of this email campaign. I don't really love that our click rate was super high because all those people that clicked never purchased the product on our e-com site. Let's put the bottom line. Let's keep that in mind because those other metrics matter, but they're contributing metrics, not the bottom line. That's the approach that I like marketers to take.
Got it. Actually measure what you're doing. Interesting take, Daniel. Laura, do you guys engage in similar measurement or do you just throw stuff out there and pray?
Oh, well, no, it's funny. Like a lot of folks will say, oh, well, you're the events people, so you don't really track anything. I'm like, of course we track everything. What's wrong with you? Because not only the number of people who come through our doors, but also the folks who respond on social. So we're tracking like, did you like the bathrooms? Did you like the speakers? Because at the end of the day, there's a return on experience. Because if you go to an experience and it actually is good, you will tell 5 more people. If you go to an experience and it sucks, you will tell 15 people. Like that is like the kind of gold standard in terms of experiences. And as we've now transitioned into the world of online experiences, it's the same premise. If it's a boring live experience, it's now happening virtually. You're already at like a -4 because everyone's like, I hate even being online and this sucks. And now it's like, oh, wait, I just sat here for 2.5 hours and I don't think I got anything out of it. When I get the survey, I'm going to put in post-event survey. This content sucked. I didn't really find any value here. By the way, there were no breaks. So, you can get even more actionable real-time data that comes out of those online experiences in a way that people will be more apt to respond to. Because think about it. Beforehand, you would be like, all right, I just this one webinar once a month. I'm not going to bother giving any feedback. Now, this is something I'm doing 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. You bet your life I'm going to give more data. So we've been seeing that and the things that we've been seeing of our clients. And so like, okay, how do we build something that makes you feel welcome and makes you feel at home in this experience so that you'll tell 10 people how great this experience was versus the 15 you would have had it been a bad one.
That's great. That brings up a great point, which is you want to create something that people want to share, not because they're trying to get the word out about a deal or 20% off, but because there's an experience or some piece of value that they want to pass on to a friend. And that's like the holy grail of what we're trying to do, is how do you make something transmissible and people start doing the work for you. Tara, what do you think about this merger of data and creativity, and how do you guys use it, if at all?
I mean, I think we use it. It works when it's used right. So we're so fortunate now, all of us, that there is so much data. I mean, and I love data, and so usually I go into things and I want to know everything. I want to know all the little bits and pieces. But I've restrained myself, because the hard part is really just focusing in on what are the things I need to know to help my creative. So like, what are the things that actually, I might want to know, did you like the interactivity of this webinar? But in the series, I'm really not going to change unless I get a huge response to that. Then maybe I don't ask that question. Maybe I focus more on the data that I really, I'm going to need to prove my, if you're testing something to prove your case or to prove the success, and focus less on the data that you don't need. I remember when I was in consulting, I had a client, and they had a ton of, they were trying to get a 360 view of their customer. And so they got it was all creative folks, and they're like, oh man, we can do this and we can do that. And if we knew this, we would tailor it to them to do that. And it was great. It was so much fun, all the brainstorming, but it was really hard to get them to like action it. So like, okay, we had all this brainstorming. Okay, now how do you take that and develop a proof of concept? So I remember actually creating, like all consultants do, you have a framework, right? So I created this brainstorm to action framework. And, I laugh about it now because it's like so kind of silly, but like they needed some kind of structure to help them focus in on what are the things that will really drive our business forward, and like, what's the data that we need to prove out those things. So, it's great that we have all this data, but I think focusing in on what is truly important, it can be a challenge, but when you can do that, I think it's really helpful.
Great. How important is it to connect with the people that you're putting things in front of? I mean, I know everybody talks about connection as a metric, but it's a tough thing to measure. And so you don't know, you have an open rate, but that obviously won't tell us about, things like, did something you say actually resonate? Will there be any brand recall? Will anyone actually care about the next thing you post? Do you have any ways to measure that? You or Nathaniel or Laura, that might not be obvious to people?
The marketers that I think get this right, Zach, are the ones that aren't afraid to break the sort of fourth wall of marketing and go from sending emails and posting social content to having a video chat or a quick call or a person-to-person email with someone in their audience. Now, Anya's there with probably a furrowed brow because that is not data, that's anecdote. But when we talk about like breaking through the noise, that kind of personal interaction, even if you're sending emails regularly to 100,000 people, getting one of them on the phone for 10 minutes, or jumping into a video chat with 3 of them over lunch, like that's going to yield the kind of ideas of who the people at the other end of that email or that social post are that actually lets you as a marketer break through the noise. So it's a little bit less about data and a little bit more about anecdote, but like collecting those in the first person, that's where like the creative insight can come. Oh, we can be helpful to our audience in this way, if you're actually talking to the audience in a real way.
I should have just muted you.
Qualitative. Oh, go ahead, Anya.
No, I was gonna say I should have just muted Nathaniel.
No anecdote.
I think that qualitative data, I mean, it's still data. So that qualitative is as important as the quantitative data.
Great.
You
Laura.
have to be able to hear from your clients and the people who are your end users. We've always thought of it as like, oh, in the live experience, go talk to your customers who came and go have a chat. Like, I mean, and the thing that's always the kind of delight and surprise is that like when they went over and talked to the people who are the fans of their brands, the users of their products, they always got really incredible insights they never would have gotten if they just got a response to an email or if they had been behind the glass at a focus group. So, to Tara's and Nathaniel's point, like having that quick one-to-one reaction, so you can hop on a webinar now and just be like, what did you guys think? Here's what this was, and get that real time when you're in the moment. Because also when you're in the moment, your first gut reaction is the one you want to go with versus the one that you had time to sit, think about, and ponder. I don't want to upset them and all this other stuff. Like your gut's going to be the first thing you say. So the more of that you can do and the qualitative data, the better off you will be.
That's awesome. Laura, you had the greatest line of the thing before when you said at a certain point a brand has to say, this is who we are, this is what we believe, and that's it. And you have to be willing to draw a line around the people who will like you for that and who will say, okay, this one isn't for me, but it's for someone else. Do you feel that, do you have examples of brands that you think do that the best? I mean, and why, why are certain, you see certain brands take chances that blow up, and then you see Dollar Shave Club or, Wendy's on Twitter making fun of people, or, Barstool Sports, which has like a $250 million valuation just from people, going out and doing pizza reviews and stuff. So how do you make sense of these things, and what can we learn from brands that take chances that really will offend a lot of people, but find their core identity?
I think the brands brands have to look at the data and find out where their tribes are. A great example of this is the folks at Popeyes. So last year when the chicken sandwich came out, they had the greatest response ever to when, Chick-fil-A tried to come at them, and they, knocked them out of the park by a few simple words, y'all good. And it started a war, and it was amazing. But, I recently interviewed, the team that was behind that, and that one tweet wasn't the story. It was the months and months of them mining the data in Twitter and talking in different communities to actually build a whole campaign that was more than just that tweet. So by the time that tweet actually got to be the thing that blew everything up, that conversation had been seeded in a number of different communities, and they, instead of trying to go and hire the Kim Kardashians of the world and making them do lots of large tweets, it was really about listening to their audience, finding out what was actually the thing that people wanted to hear about, and then tapping in to that zeitgeist. So those brands who know for real who their audience is, not who they think their audience is, by tapping into the data, are the ones who will be able to stand for something.
Awesome. Tara, we'll have to wind up here a few, but just to kind of bring everything home here, is it possible? Do you think it's possible? And again, I know you're also representing your company, so I'll ask, you can answer carefully. But do you think it's possible at the end of the day for brands to ever be received the same way that we receive each other as people, the same way that we think about when we get an email in our inbox from a friend? Or is there just too much self-interest at play for us to ever really put our guards down and accept corporations that way?
I think it's a good question, and I think it's hard. I think, a brand to come in and you to have the same type of reaction that you would like a loved one, I mean, it's a stretch. I think there's a spectrum there too. So some days there's some emails that I would rather get than an email from maybe a family member who's complaining about some kind of family drama. It really does depend on the context and the day. But I think it goes back to the earlier points that were made about really being true to your brand and understanding who you are and the value that you bring, and just really just going all in on that. Because if you were able to provide that value to your customer, then they might not love you like they love their mother, but you're going to be high up there on their list. And there's people, I mean, we all have brands that we feel really passionate about and that we talk about to our friends. And so I think if you can get to that point, I think then you're really winning.
Nathaniel, if it is Memorial Day and a brand writes Happy Memorial Day, is this noise or is this value?
This is noise.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. There may be a handful of brands for which their audience and their product and their relationship is Memorial Day centric. But if Weber Grills comes at me with another email about grilling on Memorial Day, it's not going to be additive to the relationship. So it's noise.
What
All
if
right,
they
great.
gave you a really good recipe for your grilling?
Ooh, see, if they sent me that email, say on Thursday or Friday, and said, hey man, want to help you get ready for your weekend, here's a recipe, that may be helpful because I may be at the store flipping through my phone right then. That's a little bit of what's in it for me, the recipient, not what's in it for the brand saying, you know, here's our flag picture or whatever they send on Monday.
All right, I want to wrap this up with some rapid fire questioning for each of you. Participants, feel free to also comment your answers in the box if you have any. Guys, let's go. We'll go Laura, Tara, Nathaniel. Okay, that's the order. We ready? Oh, there's good nods, thumbs up. Okay, what favorite
Uh-oh.
We're at the edge of our seats.
Yeah, I think you broke up on the question, my friend.
Like
Zach,
literally.
you froze.
Did
You
we
were
lose-
like,
Did we lose internet? We
no,
lost.
you froze for a
We're
good
back.
2 minutes. No one heard your question.
Technological problems. Favorite memory of a childhood commercial?
Oh, favorite memory of child commercial. Well, I really love the Hess truck commercials every Christmas because all I wanted was a freaking Hess truck.
That's a good one. Tara?
I was actually doing some quarantine cleaning about a month ago, and I found my baby book. And actually in the baby book, my mother had dutifully wrote, my favorite commercial was the Where's the Beef commercial from Wendy's. I must have really liked that little old lady and the little tiny patty of beef, so.
That's awesome. Mr. Yellis.
I love the 1-800-COLLECT commercials that were themed off the Brady Bunch, where all the NFL players are calling each other using 1-800-COLLECT to, and I think I have this right, save a bunch.
Yes, you did. And you could save a bunch if you use that. It's a shame payphones haven't been around like that. Okay. Laura, somebody messages you directly on LinkedIn to try to network with you. What is the one thing they should never say?
One thing they should never say, hi, Lisa. I can't tell you how many times that happens. And I'm like, for real?
Lisa.
Delete.
Tara, besides calling Corey.
I don't think there's necessarily one thing they can say, but I hope that they will keep in mind that networking is really a two-way street, and it shouldn't be all about what you can get from me, but how we can build a relationship.
Okay, how to build a relationship. Great. Nathaniel?
Quick call or quick coffee. Because it's never going to be quick, and you're not going to buy me coffee.
Okay, if you want to reach out to Nathaniel, buy him a coffee. Quarantine, guys, last question. Quarantine has kind of blurred, I think, the lines on all of our personal and business relationships. You have kids flying into conference calls, and I've heard Laura's smoke alarm buzzing in the background throughout this entire. So what do you think this spells out for the next year and the years after that? What are we doing? Are we getting closer to this kind of human corporate integration, or are things going to go back to the way they were pre-COVID? What do you guys think?
I think we actually broke the fourth wall for real, and we're not going back at this point. You know, once everyone knows what the inside of your house looks like, is it really going to be like, well, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, no, like, so, you know, I hope, or my stupid smoke is chirping for every 5 minutes. I think at this point, you know, we're just, you know, I'm hoping that this leads to far more humanity and understanding for everyone's circumstances. So whether you've got kids running around, household alarms going off, you know, we all have this basic humanity. And if we can all tap into that and be good to each other, and I hope there's a new graciousness that comes with that when you can be, you know, a lot nicer to people. I hope this makes us kinder, because if we are kinder, then I think, you know, that's only going to be good for business, because you only want to work with people who are nice to you. Like, you know the deal. The folks you want to have a beer with, the folks you want to have a coffee with, are the ones that you want to continue to work with. And the ones who are like rude or mean, you're like, I don't have that time in my life anymore. So like, well, later for you. So I hope that, it leads to more humanity. And I'll go on mute now.
I hope so too. I hope that we're able to take away from this experience that piece of humanity. I don't want to see it go away. I love it. I love when people's kids are running around in the background and saying funny things. I mean, I think it just makes work more enjoyable, and life more enjoyable. So, I'm very hopeful. I think, as time goes by, we could slip back into that more, buttoned up, polished type of, demeanors, but I really, truly hope that we don't. I hope we keep it.
I think everybody's getting into beach culture. Everybody's getting a bit more relaxed and laid back. And the language also, I think, might have changed a little bit, right? People are a bit more, in office environment, there is a certain vocabulary tied to it, right? There's leaving very little for nuance. Everybody almost speaks the exact same language, but now I think there is a bit more variation probably.
Yes, absolutely. Nathaniel?
The pandemic and quarantine, I think, accelerated what was already happening, where work and life were bleeding together. And it just sort of disappeared work as a place from our lives. And so now it's all at least for people that were able to work from home, it's all happening in the same spot. I think what'll end up happening is those of us who like stay home or stay remote will end up needing to like redraw some lines and like not carry our work with us to the couch every night until 10 o'clock, or stop interacting with our business hat on the weekends from the backyard. Like it used to be that you could sort of say, oh no, I'm not at the office, but I'll keep track of some work. And now since it's all converged, we're going to have to figure out how to draw some lines. And frankly, I think B2B like marketers and salespeople are going to have to figure out how to help us do that and like not take advantage of the fact that it's all overlaid on top of each other and everything happens right in this corner of my bedroom,
Yes. And also follow Nathaniel on TikTok. I know he's been big on TikTok since this quarantine. Since quarantine took off. No.
All lines.
If he is, it's coincidence. Okay. Guys, this is awesome. Thank you all for being here and for joining us. Laura, I want to also mention your podcast. Can you tell people about that?
Sure. I'm the host of the Reset podcast, and it's on iTunes, Spotify, and where all good podcasts are found. We focus on business leaders who are doing the real work of business, not just faking crushing it. So we've had everyone from CEOs of global agencies to Rebecca Minkoff to the first woman to get a tech patent. It really runs the gamut. So I invite you all to check it out.
I actually listened to it last night after we had our briefing call, and it was great. So I wholeheartedly endorse the podcast. And these days when you need to like actually get outside and take a walk, it's more important now than ever before. Like a podcast is a great thing to listen to. So.
I totally second that. I've been interviewed, so I also put a plug in for that. But I just really had fun listening to like all of the different variations of people's comments, and like the opening question. It's very fun, and it, I think, opens you up for being that human that you are now, right? Not just always at work.
Absolutely. Great. Well, hopefully some people have taken something away about the distinction between noise and value. But these guys are great examples of that. And we're so lucky to have had them. We'll record this and we'll put it up on the site. So please check it out. Madetalks.com. Anya, any housekeeping for us to finish up?
No, just thanks for joining. We'll send everybody the link once it's up there, as well as everyone's contact info if you want to connect. Don't say hi, Lisa, but connect on LinkedIn, and let's keep the conversation going. We really want you to continue to join us. We want this to be a fun community for all. So thanks for joining.
Yes. Buy Nathaniel a coffee and follow him on TikTok. Okay.
Like and subscribe.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Be well.